This one lesson will address 99% of any issues that you experience as a beginning guitar player. So I've been teaching for nearly 40 years now, and after teaching over these 10,000 one-on-one lessons over these last few decades, these few bits and pieces that I'm about to show you are literally going to get you through the hump that stops a lot of guitar players from thinking that they can actually play. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of this, understand that there really is only one thing that makes a difference between a mediocre or beginner guitar player and a great guitar player. And that one thing is practice. There is no other thing. If you think that it's talent, that you're born with it, that sort of thing, you might as well stop playing guitar now. I can promise you that it only comes down to practice. The reason that I say this is because a lot of folks in the beginning, they're like, I can't get it, I can't get it, I can't get it. It's just only because you haven't practiced it enough. And something in our head thinks that we have practiced it enough when we haven't. So that's lesson number one, is the only thing that's keeping you from being here to where you want to be is more practice. However, understanding what to practice and how to practice is extremely important and will rocket you forward. So it's not just practice, but it's how and when to practice, like what steps, okay? So with that being said, these are the steps that I teach my beginners. So the first thing is posture. So very important, just like the foundation of a house. How you hold your body, how you hold the guitar is absolutely going to determine how you're going to pick the guitar and how you fret the guitar, which is foundational as well, right? So we got to start at this. A lot of people go, just give me to the good stuff. This is the good stuff. This is the stuff you're going to be using all the time. So two basic ways to hold the guitar: the folk position, so holding the guitar right here on your dominant leg, right, with your dominant arm strumming and your non-dominant hand fretting. That's number one. We call that the folk position. The other position is the classical position. And although it looks a little square, it gives you one more point of holding the guitar. You got two legs, you have your chest, you got your arm. So four. Here you have three. You've got your leg, your chest, and your arm. And so it makes the guitar a little bit more wobbly. May not seem like a big deal, but when one of the things that we're going to be talking about today is you need to be able to get your hand out front and not be worrying about the guitar, not holding it like a shovel, then posture becomes a very big deal. So for beginners, I suggest holding it in the classical position just because it now puts the guitar neck up to where we need it. We'll talk about that in just a moment. And it makes the guitar less wobbly. All that being said, you can hold it like this, but if you start running into some troubles, just remember, this is your foundation we're building. It's the most important part of a building. It's the most important part of everything, okay? So make sure that your posture is where it's going to benefit you and not hinder you. Also, kind of hunching over your guitar like this, leaning over. Yeah, you need to be able to look at the frets, but all that for extended periods of time can cause some back fatigue, back aches, neck issues and that sort of thing. So just make sure that you're comfortable and you're sitting upright, okay? Super, super important. A lot of guitar players skip right over that, unfortunately, and we're talking about the foundation, right? So super important. Number two is how to hold the pick, and specifically we're going to talk about the pick rest. A lot of guitar teachers will say thumb and then hold it right here between that knuckle, just like this. It's not to say that you can't strum like that, but I have found that you just don't have nearly as much control if doing this at the knuckle than if you were to hold it just between your thumb and your first finger. Sounds very elementary, but friends, if you're holding the pick like this right off the bat, you're building a bad foundation. We don't want to do that. So thumb and first finger. Now that being said, you may come up with your own techniques and stuff, but I'm telling you, 99 times out of 100, this is always going to serve you more because it's going to be more intricate, okay? Now using a thinner pick is going to help in the beginning because as your technique is not good in the beginning, it's not for anybody. It wasn't for Eddie Van Halen or B.B. King or any of the greats, but with practice it became better. A nice thin pick will compensate, if you will. It's kind of like having long hair and using a brush with thinner bristles than one with longer bristles that would just pull your hair, it allows more leeway. And as you become, as your technique gets finer, as it gets better, a thicker pick will serve you better because you'll be more precise with it, okay? So, number one, the pick rest. Real quick, the pick rest goes like this. If you take your pick and pick through the 6th string and rest on the 5th string, like that, what we're not doing is we're not picking out like this. It's not about picking the string, it's about resting the pick on the string below the one that you're picking. That's the whole enchilada right there. May not seem like a big deal. For those of you that it is a bigger deal, that's great, because doing this exercise will really help pick control, especially if it seems like a bit of an issue for you. So pick through 6, rest on 5. It should not even be a thought. You're kind of going at an angle. It should just be something that you're like, okay, I get it. Picking into that one string. Then you want to do 2 strings and rest on that 4th string. This whole exercise may take you 15 minutes, 5 minutes, an hour. However long you do it is how good you're going to get at it. But at a certain point here, you're just going to get it. Then 3 strings, resting on that 3rd string, picking through 6, 5, 4, and resting on the 3rd string. And you're going to do that up until the 1st string. And then you can do that for all the other iterations of strings, starting on the 5th string, starting on the 4th string, etc. Just doing this will help with pick control, because a lot of times what we do when we're playing guitars, we're going to be muting strings anyhow that we don't want to be played. So make sure that you're picking like this and using the pick rest. Okay, another most foundational part of playing is fretting. So we've talked about posture, we've talked about the pick rest, we talked about expectations of practice and that sort of thing. Now we need to talk about fretting. And fretting is something that most everybody gets wrong in the beginning. What I mean by wrong is there's more optimal ways, right? There's best practices. And this is millions of guitar players over the millennia have developed these best methods. And so when you're approaching the guitar, if your thumb is at the top of the neck, now I know you're probably saying, I've seen pros do this all the time. They do, because they've developed good technique and they can cheat a bit once they get that technique down. But for the beginner, it's the kiss of death. Don't do it. Take your thumb, drop it behind the back of the neck. This is where that classical position comes in real handy, because you won't have to worry about grappling the neck because the guitar's wobbling all over the place. But dropping that thumb behind the back of the neck allows the fingers to come out more. Tucking your elbow is also a little bit helpful, tucking it in a little bit towards the guitar instead of having it out here. And what that allows is it allows the fingers to fully curl. And this is really important when we get into playing chords. You might as well practice it right in the beginning when you're fretting. Few rules for fretting. Number one, make sure you're playing on the very tips of your fingers. So what I'll do is I'll take a Sharpie and I will put a dot just like that right on the very tips of my students' fingers. So when they're looking down at their hand and they're fretting, they can see that dot is not on the string, and so I know it's not in the right place. This is not the tips of your fingers, although it looks like it, right? This is the tip of your finger. So looking from the top at your fingers, those are the tips. That's what should be touching the string. Later on, when you get into bar chords and get into more advanced techniques like double stops and what have you, will need to use a slightly different technique. But in the beginning, this is the harder technique to learn. It's less natural, so we kind of have to force ourselves a little bit to do it, okay? That being said, if you're playing on your fingertip, if you can curl this last knuckle, that's going to be the best method, because again, later on when you're playing chords, in order to clear the strings and be able to play nice clean chords, you need to be playing right on those fingertips. If you're playing on the flats of your fingers or doing not curling those knuckles, you're going to get chords that sound like this. You're not hearing all the notes, okay? So we don't want to do that. So playing right there on the tips of your fingers, also playing close to the fret is very important. Leverage. You won't have to press down as hard, so you're going to have less hand fatigue. You're going to have a better technique, a cleaner sound. So playing close to the fret, not in the middle, definitely not back here, because if you're playing back here, you're going to get that muted sound. At best, you'll get a buzzing sound. Middle of the fret, it's okay, but closer to the fret here, you don't have to press down nearly as hard. You develop these habits in the beginning, it's going to make your whole playing experience, learning experience, practice, everything so much more enjoyable. I'm super passionate about playing guitar. I'm super passionate about your success. So please let me know how I can help you. Leave your comments down below, like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next video.